you have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. If you need to transition, it's totally fine. Commissioner Bay is here.
I can go for 2 more. I just up
Okay.
because I wanted to hear the next 2, and then I
Got it.
can slide out. Thank you.
We have the next one, section 19.3. The chief of schools requests the board's approval to extend the contract term with Holistic Life Foundation to continue mindfulness programming. The board is requested to extend the contract through June 30th, 2026.
And my board commissioners, are there any questions about this?
In the extension of that contract, is there a significant increase? What's the budgetary impact? Because I mean, Holistic Life has done a very great job for city schools over the years. I want to make sure that we are consistent with them. And so therefore, yeah.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I thought you were finished with the question.
Oh no, go right ahead. Thank you. Okay. Please.
So this is just for us to continue with the contract. The cap amount is the same that they have previously had. And so there's the request or the amount that you see on here was the previously approved amount. And based upon what they're projecting for the upcoming school year, it will be enough for them to continue their services.
Okay, so
they're not taking on.
Go on. Commissioner Simmons,
I think we're in the same space that we know that they've been partners with the district for a really long time, and just want to they're not taking on. I guess my question is, so they're not going to be able to take on new schools with the budget that they already have, or are they thinking about that? Or I don't know.
Yeah. So currently, what I provided within the letter are the schools that some of the schools that they already are currently working with and will be working with for next school year. But there is enough still towards that amount that if additional schools wanted to add and they will have their own funding, then they would be able to add those schools as well. It's enough for me.
What you're saying is that if additional schools wanted to join, they would have to pull from their budget in order to add them in. And even at the same token, as we find that the school budgets have been kind of tightened around the belt, is that a reasonable forecast? Because I mean, yeah, is that a reasonable forecast?
Yeah. So all of the services for Holistic Life currently are either from external funding sources that they have either obtained to support the schools or from the school's budget. This isn't anything that we are centrally paying for. So the schools currently, in their projections, they were able to reach out to the schools that they are currently working with, and they feel pretty comfortable that they will be able to pursue and continue programming for them. I'm not able to really answer for additional schools if it's in their budget, because of case that would be a school by school basis. But in terms of the amount that they can work towards, for this board approved amount, they can add additional schools and it wouldn't be problematic if the school already has funding.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and for these extensions, the end users and procurement did work with the vendors on their projections and what capacity they had and what they estimated their spend would be for next year. So so Holistic Life did contribute to the planning for this letter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
The next item is 19.4. The chief of schools requests the board's approval to extend the contract term and increase the estimated total contract amount with the movement team to continue mentoring programming services. The board's requested to extend the contract through June 30th, 2026, as well as increase the estimated total contract amount from $3,428,673. I'm sorry, $3,428,673 to $4,028,673, and that's an increase of $600,000.
I know there's been a lot of conversation about the good work that the movement team has provided to our schools and our young people. So I appreciate knowing that there's continued services here. Commissioner Simmons, Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, any questions?
No,
there's no concerns that this will represent good value to our schools and our young people. So thank you.
All right, and the last item is 19.5. The Chief of Schools requests the board's approval to extend the contract term with Concentric Holdings, Inc. to provide home visits that support re-engagement of students and families. The board is requested to extend this contract through June 30th, 2026.
Am I mistaken? I don't think 19.05 made the, oh, it's 19.04.
There's, yeah, I had a typo.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Are there any questions about Concentric? The question I had is their services, is this contract lived out within the re-engagement team, or is this one that serves a little bit broadly more across multiple city schools? How does this actually work in implementation?
Yes, very good question. So it's both and in this one. So the re-engagement center has the ability, their engagement with Concentric for re-engaging some of their students, withdrawn students or specialized population that they're working with there. And then there are also schools who can individually also support or have Concentric support them with re-engaging students. What we do for those contracts are monitored centrally here by our office here in the student wholeness team.
Got it. Okay.
Question, Mayor. The question that I have is there a level of duplication? And the reason why I ask that is, is there a level of duplication in that? Because you're saying the schools can contract for the Concentric to provide some help in this, but we have a re-engagement center. So do they go through the re-engagement center, or is it two separate operations? And that's the question of duplication.
Yeah, good question. So two separate, but we do work collectively to make sure that any school that's going through the re-engagement center is just going through the re-engagement center, and then anyone that's coming through our office is separate.
So I don't know if that really answers the question of duplication.
So, yeah, so, and I think Roger is on too, who can potentially answer the point of if there are students who may have been at a school, let's say in September or October, they were missing or they didn't come back. And then maybe that school was working with them and they did a home visit. If that student transitions to another school or may have withdrawn or W50, then I believe, Roger, if you can clarify here for that student, the school that the student goes to that new school, they may resubmit that name, but it would be for a different school because they're trying to re-engage them there at that school. Does that make sense?
So yes, so there is the process in which a student who's been withdrawn and is re-engaged, we bring them back. And if that student happens to go to another school and he is withdrawn again, we try to get him back. So we try to do several attempts to get the student back. So sometimes it can be the same student, but at a different school.
So is this a question of capacity? I mean, is Concentric like an overflow valve, so to speak? Or please, can you help clarify that for me, please?
Can you state your question? Yeah,
I'm saying,
your
is this a question of capacity? We can only handle so much, and so we need the support of Concentric. Is that what?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
But there are schools that if individual schools are working with them, you won't see that the same school is working with Roger or under re-engagement center. You'll see there are separate schools under the re-engagement center, and then our office will oversee a small subset of schools. There'll be two different sets of schools.
Okay. Is there centralization in the programming then? If you're, that Yeah, I guess that's within the realm of questioning. Is there centralization in the programming? So they're doing no more than we would do with, with re-engagement, or, who's driving the ship, so to speak.
Yeah, so schools can individually reach out. Well, let me back up. So schools will reach out to our office. The process that we're putting in place is that schools will reach out to our office if they want to have concentric support with home visits. We will work with a smaller number of schools moving forward just to make sure that we can have monitoring around how many visits are we doing, what students are we seeing, and then also be able to monitor based upon that, what are we seeing the impact is? We know part of that impact is to immediately come back, but we also want to be able to see what are the broader impacts in terms of this and how we really are impacting student achievement and attendance. So because of that, we will have a more centralized process for students to engage with Concentric. And then we are also meeting with Concentric on a monthly basis, our office in terms of, as well as re-engagement office in Concentric, to review that data and have conversations about, so what are we learning and what are we seeing as a result of this support?
Thank you.
Of course, of course.
Awesome. Commissioner Simmons, did you have any questions on this item?
No, I didn't. Thank you.
I think that takes us to the end of the procurement agenda this afternoon. Is that right? All right.
Thanks,
I want to
everyone.
thank, yep. Thanks, Commissioner Simmons. And I actually want to thank the entire team from City Schools for your work. I know these procurements are really important as we move into summer programming and into school year 25, 26 and beyond. So I appreciate the work to move this forward. Commissioner Kenyatta, we changed up the agenda since I'm pitch hitting this afternoon for Commissioner Slater Harrington, and we just need to prioritize during procurement because Commissioner Simmons couldn't stay. So we are going to do compliance reports. The very first one that we have is 3.01, JJJ academic eligibility for extracurricular activities. Did you have any questions on that one, Commissioner? I actually had a question on this one. This is just for my knowledge. So the question I had on this is just given that there is some work that you guys want to do to enhance the policy. So I said on policy committee normally, is this what's driving these changes and revisions to this policy? Is it because we're seeing schools that are, in your opinion, not complying, or is this an opportunity to make sure we're codifying good work? I wasn't super clear what's driving where you guys want to see some enhancements to policy JJJ.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that question, Commissioner Sally. Again, Casey Davis, Director of Academic Operations. I'm going to answer like a little bit of that, but then my colleagues in the schools office are also here because this is really a joint policy and a joint compliance report from us. I think to answer your question, and what I think is sort of signaled in that background and information portion of this report, is that over the course of the past several years, as we've returned from the pandemic, the district has actually kind of backed away from saying, hey, we've got to make sure that we're documenting any restrictions on access to extracurricular activities, academic or otherwise. And in fact, wanting to be broader and more equitable in our access to those things. And so the opportunity to review JJJ is not necessarily because we've been seeing schools be restrictive or because, schools have been doing something and they shouldn't be. It really isn't in that space. Rather, it's in the space of, we have a compliance report a compliance mechanism at this point in time that doesn't jive with some of the other policies that we've put in place or the way in which we really want to approach making sure that we have broad access to extracurriculars for our students. So it's really just a way to review it, revise it, take a step back and make sure that we as a district have codified the right approach to doing this work if there's one needed. Additionally, we just brought through the board JJIC, to which I know my friends in the schools office can speak more to, but language that's in there can help inform this. Likewise with other policies, can help inform how we're approaching that academic eligibility component for things like extracurriculars. So that's really the thrust of that, at least from the academics landscape, is taking that quick step back to make sure we're doing the right thing on behalf of students and making sure our policies align.
Okay.
Yes.
And this is, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank you, Casey. My name is Sonia Goodwin. I am the Executive Director for Whole Child Services and Supports, partnering with the academics team. And I was just going to say the work that we did on JJIC for the academic eligibility for the scholastic athletics that was just adopted April of this year. We wanted to look to see how we could streamline the eligibility requirements because we did make a change to the way we are looking at the eligibility requirements for the middle school. And so we just wanted to make sure with all of the work that we did with JJIC that we are looking at some of those same areas and ensuring that we still hold to build upon this and continue to create opportunities for students to enhance engagement. But we want to make sure that we're also looking at areas where we may want to have more oversight and possibly limited academic eligibility where it's appropriate.
Got it. Go ahead, Commissioner Kenyatta. I still have.
Yeah, and I remember, I look at the work that you did with JJIC, and I think you pretty much answered that question in that, are you trying to make sure that we're consistent across the board? Because, the eligibility requirements sometimes may vary between academics and other areas. So I wanted to make sure, is this what we're trying to do? Streamline and kind of shape it up so it is actually congruent, so to speak.
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, we want to be fair. We want to make sure that it's equitable, and we do not want to make it seem like we are like not providing the same amount of attention or the same amount of oversight or supervision for the enrichment piece, or as we are to athletics. So we just want to make sure that we're giving the right amount of attention to it so that we can make the right decisions so that students still have the opportunities, and we continue to use this to enhance engagement, but at the same time, making sure that we're putting the right guardrails in place to monitor.
Is this an apples and orange thing, though? I mean, are they really that similar that you can actually look at the duplication of guardrails versus the similarity of guardrails? And that becomes the question.
You're absolutely correct, because there are individuals on two totally opposite sides. Some feel that there should not be any requirements, and whoever wants to participate with the extracurricular activity should, but then there are others who feel if we have them for athletics, like what's the difference and why are we not putting some of the same things in place? So we want time to give the stakeholders a chance to have that conversation, but at the same time, we did not want to restrict our students from being able to participate, if that makes sense.
That makes good sense. I just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and just make sure I'm crystal clear. So are there different types of extracurricular activities that have different eligibility requirements? So meaning, like if I was doing dance, if that's an extracurricular activity, or if a extracurricular is offered by a partner organization, are we looking at different eligibility criteria in certain instances and certain circumstances? I may have missed this.
I'm sorry. I don't think you were finished.
Oh, no, I may have missed that if you covered it. So I'm sorry.
Well, those are all things that we're definitely going to consider while we're doing the review, because we know that they're at different levels, and so we want to ensure that we take everything into consideration to see if it needs to be a tiered approach, if it needs to be like an overall approach, because there are differences in the different activities, and so we just want to make sure that we do not make decisions that are going to limit the students from being able to participate.
Got it. Okay. That would be
And
helpful.
Chair Sally, to be clear as well, the current policy doesn't it doesn't distinguish between a dance or a chess club or something offered by a partner versus something in-house at a school. So there's no differentiation in the current policy as it stands.
Okay.
Well, there would be because dance, I think, is listed under athletics. Am I not correct? Is that?
No, that is not one that we have. I'm going to check that, but I know that was open for discussion. But that's not that's not one of the areas that our athletic team, our athletic group centrally is overseeing.
Okay, but here's the thing, because it's and the question, and I'm sorry if I'm interrupting your response, but the thing is that, you know, to let's say an extracurricular activity is an extracurricular activity. So let's say you're in the chess club, and yet you're in, let's say, DECA. They're two different clubs, but they're still both extracurricular activities. So the restrictions for DECA would be different than the restrictions for maybe for a chess club, even though they both have their academic capabilities of enriching our students. So, I mean, there's a lot of tiers to be dissecting in looking at these programming, right? Am I correct or am I?
Yes, you are absolutely correct, which is why we asked that for year 26-27, which is not next year, but the year after that, we're proposing that the policy is presented to the policy committee at that time and the board commissioners, so that we're able to have this upcoming year to have these conversations and to make sure that we are viewing it the way that it should be, because you're right, there are a lot of different dimensions and we want to make sure we get it right. Of course, not by ourselves, but with the input of others.
Makes sense. I mean, the stakeholder, you're going to get really rich stakeholder feedback on that, especially from young people. They're going to have a lot to say. I'm looking forward to seeing that in 26, 27.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it very much. Our second compliance report this afternoon is IHBJ for charter and operator-led schools. Angela, would you mind going through this with us? Like, I think there's some really important and rich information here as I was reviewing this that I would love to engage with you on. That's worth the presentation. And I'm not sure if that was your original intent, Angela, if you wanted to do that or not.
Am I up? Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
Now I can hear you.
Hey, sorry guys, sorry.
It's okay.
I think I missed the
No
cue,
worries.
but hello everybody, Angela Alvarez, Senior Executive Director for the Office of New Initiatives. Do you want to present it or do you want to just ask questions? How do you want to do it?
No, I would rather a presentation. I think there's some important information here, and I'm just trying to make sure I have. There's just been a lot of conversation around charter schools. I want to make sure I have the right consumer information so that I can engage meaningfully in these circles and other circles related to board business on charter schools. So I think the consumer information is helpful for me.
Okay. Sorry, just having a little tech slowness. My computer's moving slow, but I think it's up. You guys can see it now.
Yep.
So this is the Charter and Operator Schools Compliance Report. This is always a backwards looking report. So looking to last school year 23-24, is what it covers. This is a summary of a full written report the board will receive on June 30. This is mostly aligned to priority 6, so that it touches on other priorities here, which is about making sure that we're increasing and ensuring the quality of our schools to guarantee a high quality experience, including charters. The policy that governs our work with operators requires their annual report on student performance, fiscal accountability, and then any other requirements that could be important. Throughout the report, you're going to hear references to different school types, including traditional schools, but I wanted to take a quick second just to define some of the terms you'll hear. So for charter schools, we have 2 types of charter schools, and you'll see references to those. Wholly new, meaning it was a brand new school idea that the board approved. Conversions, which are existing neighborhood schools that were converted into traditional school, converted from a traditional school for school improvement. And we have 2 contract schools, for high school, early college, and Henderson Hawkins. These are schools that are operate in a lot of ways like charter schools, but serve specific district needs or a specific population of students. And then we have 2 transformation schools, who are Baltimore Design School and Reach Partnership School. If you were to think of a continuum, charter and contract schools would be at the furthest end of like autonomy and flexibility. Transformation schools would be in the middle, and then traditional schools would be on the opposite end, just to understand the flow between the school types. Baltimore City is home to 31 charter schools, or 2/3 of all the charter schools in the state of Maryland. So we have been committed to this strategy and working with other operator types, as I just described, as ways to offer different offerings to our families, and as well as part of our work around school improvement. Of our 76,000, almost 76,000 students we served in school year 23-24, over 16,000 of them were in operator schools. And so you can see on this slide, so the breakdown by the different school types that we talked about. This makes up 21.8%. I want to, just because you guys have been having budget presentations, kind of be really clear about in here when we're talking about percentages, it includes pre-K. So this is all enrollment. When we do budget presentations, it excludes, it's just K-12. So the percentages will be different in this presentation. That's all than of like a finance presentation, because that there's always excludes pre-K. It's not funded the same. For them, it doesn't make sense from a funding perspective to include those students. So you can kind of see the breakdown of our school types here. One of the things that we look at in the full report, and you'll see different demographic information, so we're highlighting some key things. It's just like, who are the students? And so what do we know about the economic disadvantage rates for students? And so our wholly new charters actually have slightly lower rates of economic disadvantage than traditional schools. Our conversions and our other operators have the highest level of economic disadvantaged students. And so you can see our other operators are here at the top at 76%, with the same percentage as conversions, and our wholly new charters there at 70%. So there's differences, but within a band of around poverty, which may be different than other places in the nation. We're going to look at charters. We also look at our students with disabilities. Here we're in the summary, we're focusing on our students who are in the LREC, which means they spend 40% or less of their time in a general ed setting. And so you can see our traditional schools have significantly more of that pop than our operator-led schools at 21% in school year 23-24. That's down from 27% in 2019-20. So you can see those those differences. And all the school types, except for operator schools, which has been pretty flat, have come down from 2019-20 in terms of those settings. This is important because our students with LREC or higher LRECs require more supports than students with lower LRECs, and additional resources to make sure we're fully supporting the needs of students. And so it's good to sort of understand how these students show up in schools. Yeah, Commissioner Bay?
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, there you go. The question that I want to just throw out there is, as we look at this comparison, we have an infrastructure in our that most charters would not normally have in taking care of our students with the LRECs, right? Am I correct?
No. So
Okay.
all of our general ed public schools are expected to serve students from LREA to LREC in the same way. So if students apply, they're expected to provide that support on whatever the least restrictive environment is for the students who are enrolled in their schools. So they have the same expectations and obligations as any other public school that's a general ed school.
Question, do they have the same capacity? And that's the question that it becomes.
That's
It's
that's the expectation. And so we hold them accountable to that in our renewal process and through checks throughout the year. And I think you'll see throughout the presentation, our charters and other operator schools are just like our traditional schools in that some schools do a really amazing job at that. Some schools are in the middle, and some schools are it's an area of growth for them.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify that for me, because
No, those are great questions. Next, we're going to just look at some snapshots of MCAT performance. When you look at the full report, you'll see across what we're calling poverty index levels. We know that state assessments, there's a relationship between the relative wealth of the student pop and performance in state assessments. So to control for that, we look at schools in comparison to other schools of similar poverty. In terms of trends, what we're seeing is for school year 23-24, for elementary, ELA, and math, most students, the average level of performance was developing learner, meaning students have partial proficiency. So you'll see that throughout. For middle grades, that's true for ELA. Math is still an area of growth in middle. And so you'll see that typical learner is a beginning learner, needing substantial academic support to be ready for the next grade level. And so this graph is showing you how schools compare that are between the 88 and 100% economic disadvantage, which is where most of our elementary or elementary middle schools fall. And so this is why I chose to use this in the summary. The schools that are up here have they're higher than the average for both math and ELA. And so you can see Wall Street is a charter school that's in here, but is along with other schools like Curtis Bay or Violetville. And you can see our charters. So the oranges are conversions and the purples are wholly new, and our other operator blue. You can see our operator schools are sort of throughout here in terms of performance. So level, just for folks, this line here is the math average. So if you're above this average, above that line, you're above average in math. And this is the average for ELA. So if you're on this side, you're above average in ELA. And this is showing for middle grades.
That's just a sampling of schools, right? That's not every, right?
This is all the schools for the 80 to 100 economic disadvantage level.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's already cut. Okay.
Yeah, but there's graphs for each of the index levels. So I can't remember the breakdowns right now at the top, but like 60 to 80, like for each of the other poverty levels.
Got it.
So similarly, when I look at our secondary students, One thing to understand about operator schools, and most of them, particularly charters, are K5s or K8s. So this is a smaller sector. When we start to get to the secondary schools, we have 5 charter schools that serve high school grades with 1,870 students total. We have 2 transformation schools. We have 1 contract school. In the other operator category will be the combination of transformation and charter schools, and we look at the comparisons. And then within traditional schools, we have some complexity there because we have schools that are non-selective as well as selective schools. And so you can see the breakdown: 16 non-selective schools versus 5 selective high schools, and the demographic data here. And it's important to contextualize like who the students are before we look at the outcome data. So one of the key differences between our operator schools and our traditional non-selective schools is the demographic characteristics of our students. And so for our traditional non-selective schools, close to half of their pop, 43%, are overage students. So those are students who are behind. And so many of those students are in our traditional non-selective, which is different than what you can see for our operator schools that range in that 22 to 24% for overage students. And in our traditional non-selective, you can see at 9%. Similarly, our multilingual learners are primarily in our traditional non-selective. So they have both of these populations that require additional supports that are part of their makeup. And so I think this is important as we go to look at the academic outcome data. For graduation rates at all schools, those rates increased from pre-pandemic levels for all school types, with the exception of other operator schools. We didn't track them separately going back that same time span. And our charter and other operator schools have higher graduation rates than our traditional non-selective, so above like 80% graduation, which I have an appendix, and if it's helpful, I can flip to that just to see that. Let me know. For MCAT results, you're going to see their mix, similar to how we looked at the K5s and middle grades performance. So I'm not going to show the graph unless you want me to. I'm going to keep going.
Yep, okay. Keep moving. Yep.
And one other thing, we looked at our students attending regularly. So in the full report, you'll see for each of the years. But one of the things that I think is good is that we're seeing chronic absence rates fall from 21-22 to 23-24. We looked at that period of time, although you'll see a longer span when you see the full data. But in particular, 21-22 is the year we returned to in-person instruction from the pandemic. And so seeing those decreases, I think, is important. And so we saw that across types. Other operators in our traditional schools had the biggest decreases for elementary and middle grades. For secondary schools are all charter category, and our traditional non-selective had the largest change. And so that's what this graph is kind of demonstrating. I forgot to put the labels. I'll fix that, put the labels. This is our K5 here. So you can see that big improvement. And this is our middle here. And so you can see the traditional and the other operators, big improvements there. And then this is the high schools with our traditional and our all charters having a bigger improvement there from that time period. The other thing we look at in this report is fiscal accountability. We are always making sure that schools are managing their budgets, and we do kind of regular reporting, regular checking. They submit quarterly reports, but we do a deeper financial analysis when schools go through renewal. And so there we were looking for schools to have a meets expectations, which is the highest rating. There were 3 schools that went through renewal in school year 23-24, and each of them got a meets expectation in the finance category. The other thing we look at is just grant allocations to charter schools. And so I'm going to show you just the difference in grants from school year 22-23 to 23-24. And you can see that overall, whether it's up and down with individual grants, there were increased funding around just over $500,000 overall in allocations to charter schools when we look at the grant dollars. And then finally, another thing we thought is important to, and this is our first time reporting on it, is just our school facilities. So we have charters that are in our district facilities, as well as are in non-district facilities. For the summary, and I wanted to just share a little bit about our charters and district facilities. So in school year 23-24, 13 of our 31 charter schools were housed in our facilities. For schools in our facilities, the rent we charge is the average cost of maintenance plus utilities, which are trued up. And so of those 13, and so the typical rent for that year was $4.65. And 11 of those 13 schools are paying rent that was below that $4.65. Additional thing that's important for people to understand is that charter schools and district buildings are prioritized in our capital improvement program funds in the same way as traditional schools based on need. So all schools in our buildings are treated the same to make sure that all of our students are getting those improvements. Just to shed a little bit more light on this below, some are close, right? So some of it has to do with the period of time when you enter your lease and what the lease terms were at that time. So these are schools that are paying, between 80 and 100% of the rent for the facilities that they're located in. To give you a chance just to read it.
No, that makes sense. And I think that's an important point to underscore, for the public and for the board, in terms of just that, what you just said in terms of the lease negotiation timeframe.
And then these are the schools that are paying 50% or less of that rental rate from school year 24. It includes 2 of our schools that are in a unique kind of rental agreement. That's Bel Air, Edison, and Kip Harmony, where they're in maintenance-free leases, meaning they take on the responsibility maintaining the building and they only pay the utilities. So they're so that's just a thing, contextual point, just an understanding the rental rate there. And so that is the full summary. There's a couple appendix slides that showed the grad rate and some of the things I didn't touch on. And but
I appreciate that. I mean, this raises a lot of questions for me. I think are worth going on into at another point in time, another interval, but I really appreciate the report. One, it's helpful as a baseline set of information in terms of making sure that the board understands where charter schools are at today and the things that we are tracking. Two, what we're starting to understand or continue to understand about performance. 3, who they're serving in our district, and a whole bunch of other things that I think are really important for the board to understand as we make decisions on the portfolio at a large, not just about charter schools, but just the entire portfolio of schools. Commissioner Kenyatta-Bay, are there things that you want to go into in particular? I don't know if I see him. He may have gone away. I think that's it, Angela. I'll follow up with questions I have on this, and there likely will be other commissioners that will be in touch about the information that's contained in the compliance report, but this is very helpful.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Given that I believe, are just about towards the end of the agenda, Dr. Duckins or Tanisha, I'm not sure, do we have any public comment this afternoon?
I don't believe we do. Tanisha, do you have any?
No, you're correct. There aren't any.
Okay, thanks.
And I believe this is the last teaching and learning meeting for the academic year. Is that right? This is not normally. All right. I just want to make sure I'm not giving information out that's wrong or incorrect. So given that, sort of remind the public that we do accept public comment in writing based upon any of the information that's shared here today. There's other things I need housekeeping wise. Sorry, just going through this very quick. Most of those procurement items will appear on the next board meeting on June the 10th. We do, with just going back to public comment, just so folks know, folks can sign up till 3:30. We allow 5 individuals. Feel free to email the board office or call the board office. If you have questions or feedback on anything presented today, I'd like to extend a thank you again to our staff by walking us through the information that's presented here, especially the items related to procurement that will allow us to have a real strong start to school year 25-26. I wish everybody a really wonderful summer if I don't see you before the end of the school year. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
See you all soon. Thank you.